And so that's in Genesis, and you realize that now we're not dealing with normal human beings in power positions. We're dealing with the virtual reptilian aliens, people who are just gone. They have no love for humanity, believe me.
Okay, I was going to ask you about that, because like the chemtrails are an important thing that that's happening across the world. I mean, you wrote extensively about chemtrails in your book, Death in the Air, Globalization and Terrorism and Toxic Warfare. And when I try to explain chemtrails to people, I mean, it's almost impossible sometimes. And the main argument I get from people is well, like people argue that everybody has to breathe the air, so why would the elite be spraying the entire world? I mean, they have to breathe too. And it's something that I've never really been able to find a good answer for, except to say, well, maybe they're not human. So you sort of explained that as well with that answer.
Yeah, again, they're cold-blooded. Like, lizards are cold-blooded. Reptiles are cold-blooded. They're not warm-blooded. There's a big difference in the susceptibility to various, chemical as well as biological risks. And so there's a great likelihood that we're not really dealing with normal people who share love and empathy and compassion. They don't. For you to have an agenda to kill without their consent, this number of people, you can't be a normal human being. That's not normal. That is beyond psychopathic. A psychopath requests therapy or is confined and put away. We don't see that happening at the highest levels of our cryptocracy or our global oligarchy, the people that are really covertly running the show. So, in essence, to answer your question is the combination of chemicals like chemtrail sprays and like pesticides from the frights that they created and the germs that they created in the labs, such as the not just the biological risks for flus, but the various types of germs that they've got, the evolved viruses from the horses, from the cattle, from like beyond anthrax. They've got this. Oh, gee whiz, it's escaped me right now. But please forgive me. But yeah, they've got. West Nile. I'm thinking about West Nile virus.
Oh, okay.
So, and they use the West Nile virus as an example for need for spraying toxic pesticides in urban areas here in the United States and elsewhere. So the concept of spraying deadly chemicals on populations, on human populations, allegedly in defense of public health and safety is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, when you, again, study that, and I did write a lot about that in the book Death in the Air, Globalism, Terrorism, and Toxic Warfare, where the subject of how come they're doing this, why are they spraying chemtrail sprays, why are they spraying the malathion and Anvil 1010 and pyrethroid types of organophosphate chemical formulas, is because chemicals, like you said about stress, wreaks havoc with the human immune system, makes people more susceptible to opportunistic infections and are killed more readily. They're made more ill more readily. And so this is money-making, profiteering, again, off of humanity's suffering, which is the standard definition of genocide. But the most important thing that you've got to realize, which has relevance to this seeding of the population with new viruses for genetic mutation of the human race, is this concept that it's being done, and it's a covert operation that's going on in broad daylight. And I had Jack Kingston, who is Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon, in charge of a major group in the United States. He retired, and he advised me after I wrote the book Emerging Viruses. He says, Len, the number one best way to conduct a covert operation is to do it in broad daylight in front of everybody's eyes and nobody sees anything. And that's what this is. When they tell you that there's no such thing as chemtrails and that they're not polluting the drinking water and that fluoride is healthy for you and it's good for your teeth and that the chlorine is necessary, forget ultraviolet light, forget oxygen, simple ozone. We need to chlorinate and pollute all the drinking water worldwide. And, you get engaged in this pseudo-scientific realm where public health is a gross genocidal manipulation. And then you realize that the intoxication is multifold. And that's the plan. It's called the Revolution in Military Affairs. It was advanced by the United States War College as the most beneficial, profitable, likely to succeed manner of conducting war on populations. They said you need to have, number one, propaganda. Absolute psychological operations to instill in the public a belief that what you're doing is justified. And you create fear so that they would even call for it, like they're doing with legislation today. And then you combine combinations of chemicals and biologicals. And it's called, in the United States, it's called the Russian biological cocktail method of conducting what's called, quote, non-lethal warfare. That's a misnomer. It's very lethal, but it kills you slowly, most expensively, because pharmaceutically you're basically stockpiling and buying this and buying that drug like Tamiflu. You're buying all this garbage that is causing more toxicity, but that's the agenda. And so that's the Russian biological cocktail method of conducting non-lethal warfare, where you first expose people to combinations of immune system ravaging chemicals and followed it by biologicals. So now you've got the population dying of something that you can't trace. You cannot pin it down to any one thing. So that makes it the perfect cover. And you never have the liability. You never have the popular uprising against the companies and the stewards of this genocide. So that's what most explains what's taking place today in this Babylonian hypocrisy we call planet Earth.
Yeah, selling sickness. What I was trying to explain to people in a couple of the last radio shows is that this whole thing's being run by the banksters, by this money cartel and these bloodlines that go way back, and it was these people who controlled both sides of the conflict in World War II. And if you look at what happened in Nazi Germany, it was basically a beta test for what they're doing to the whole world. They went in, they tested all the fluoride, they tested all these mind control experiments and all sorts of exotic weapons and all sorts of things they tried out on the Russians, and then they just simply came out after the war and said, okay, everybody needs fluoride, you all need all these food additives for your own good, of course. And they just did it to the whole world. It was like a little prelude of what was to come.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we're in a fix, and our species are crying. You've got the whales that are beaching themselves as the dolphins are also sick. You've got the Navy sonar. You've got the pollution in the water. The water is being used. Wherever you're dumping down heavy metals and poisons into the drains, into the sinks, into the waterways, it's literally killing off God, because, again, part of the triune God in the beginning, there was the Creator, there was the water, even before there was the Word mentioned. So this is now what we've got. We've got a crisis, and the Creator basically is in charge of the universe, and everything is in balance. You can't get it out of balance without having it go back into balance, or, you can't fool with Mother Nature, in other words. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think, so the spiritual calling that you're feeling, and I'm feeling, and our friends and family, extended family, have engaged a spiritual renaissance, an evolution in consciousness, whereby we're no longer going to be putting up with that. And in fact, the beauty is that when you're resonating in love, when you're resonating at this high level of creative capability, then you do not fear. You're not in fear because you're no longer susceptible to the physical realm. And that is the only salvation. Isn't it a magnificent time in history where you got to either choose in or choose out?